Hey guys, wanted to show you our latest acquisition that we've got for our generator. And to give you a brief background here, we've got this generator we purchased at Costco, and it's a 5200 watt generator. When we get power outages, and it happens fairly frequently around here, we fire up this generator, and originally I used to take extension cords and just kind of string them around the house and power lights and plug the refrigerator in and so forth. But that's got limitations if you're going to be having any extended power outage, because you can't very well unplug your furnace, so to speak, and plug it in. I mean, it's technically possible, but it would be very cumbersome to do that. So what they do is they have a device that you can purchase and wire it in. It's called a transfer switch, and what this enables you to do, when you wire it into your circuit panel, you select a certain number of essential circuits that you want to power. In my case, the fridge, the well pump, the sump pump, the ejector pump, the furnace. These are essential circuits that I would like to have powered up, especially in the winter if we lose power. So the way I designed it is I selected those essential circuits, and the transfer switch is basically placed in series between the load and the line voltage, and it gives you the opportunity to jumper in your generator power. Then on the front panel of the transfer switch, you've got switches and breakers for each of the circuits, and then the positions on the switch are line and generator. And the whole purpose of this is so that if you have the power company restore power, you don't want to have both the generator and the line voltage on there at the same time, because it's going to zap out your generator. So the transfer switch kind of isolates the circuit away so that the generator can power it, and when the power comes back on, you simply return these switches to the line position and you're back to normal power. Anyway, we can do another video on how I wired that in and just some of the basic principles involved in that, but it kind of gives us a lot more flexibility with respect to power outages. So I've noticed that this generator is probably a third over capacity. So I mean, I could probably power another 2 circuits if I had the availability on my transfer switch, because I've got more than enough power on this generator, which I may do that in the future, but better to have more power than too little, I guess. The other point is that when you wire this into your transfer switch, you've also got some extension cords you can run off this too, so having a little bit extra power is not a bad thing. At any rate, I get about 9 to 10 hours a runtime off of a tank of gas, and this has got that tank on the top is a 5-gallon tank, and that gives me about 9 to 10 hours of runtime, which is not bad. But the issue that I've run across is when I purchased this, I forgot to drain the gas out of the carburetor float, the carburetor bowl, and it kind of gummed up the carb, and I had to take it out and rebuild it and clean it up. But it's a good lesson to learn. You don't repeat that one. Anyway, I have since used stable in the tank, and I've also, when I run this thing at the end of the season or the end of the time I'm using it, I just close the valve underneath the tank, and I let the engine run, and it runs the thing out of gas. This way you don't have gas in the lines that are going to gum up and mess up your carburetor. So that's one lesson. The other one is that storing these tanks of gas is kind of problematic, because you got to rotate it and you got to use it, or it's going to go bad eventually. Even if you put stable in there, at some point the gas is going to go bad. So a guy at work talked about a device that he got for his generator, which is this kit here. I've ordered one for myself, and basically what this thing does is it enables you to run propane. So you can take the propane tanks that you use for your gas grill, and those can be used as a nice backup for your stove if you lost gas, lost power even. Gives you more flexibility, but those same tanks can now be used to run this generator. And the thing I like about the propane is when you store these propane tanks, you don't have to worry about the propane going bad. The stuff pretty much lasts indefinitely. So by acquiring some of these propane tanks, a lot of people will throw out gas grills and they throw the tanks out with it. So you can oftentimes find these propane tanks, these 20-pound propane tanks, and so it's not too hard to acquire a bunch of them, and you just fill them up and store them. They do have some precautions. You've got to be careful not to store them inside. Best to store them outside in like a deck box or a shed. But using normal precautions, it can be a very good, safe, reliable way to store your gas. And so with this kit here that I'm going to install, and I'll show you how I do it, this is going to allow me to run this generator off of propane. And the guy at work that told me about this, he set his up and found that he didn't give me an exact length of time that his generator ran, and he's got a different kind of generator. I can keep you guys posted on that. But he did say that one of the nice things about it is that the engine runs more smooth. Usually when I'm running this engine on gasoline, it's always kind of hunting to find that that RPM that it's set to. It always drifts a little bit, so it's always kind of varying. But with propane, I guess when you set this up, you got a constant flow with the regulator, and so it's a much smoother running of the engine. So that's kind of interesting. But in the picture here, you'll see I've got here in the lower left, I've got this regulator, and this is what is in charge of regulating the pressure from the tank. What you do is you take this hose here and you hook up this end to your propane tank, and then this end here goes into the inlet right here. And I'll show you all this when it's hooked up, but it goes into this inlet of this regulator right here, and then the outlet right here attaches to this hose, and then this gets hooked up to the venturi, which is kind of the heart of this thing. This venturi hooks up to this end of the hose, and that gets hooked up to your regulator. You can adjust it right here for flow. But what happens is, Bernoulli's principle says that when you've got a mass of air flowing through a restriction, it's got to move faster in order to get that same mass of airflow past the restriction, so it's got to speed up. And when it speeds up, it creates a vacuum or a low pressure. And so, I don't know if you can see in here, right in here, there are some slots on either side, and those slots are connected to this hose that goes back to your gas. So you bolt this piece onto your carburetor. It's just an add-on, and the gas is regulated by both your adjustment on here, and it's also adjusted by this pressure regulator to keep it at a constant pressure from your tank, and your engine will run off of this. So all you do is you turn off your normal gasoline source and you run it off propane. So we're gonna set this up, and I'll show you how it works. One other thing I might add here, the company that I got this from is Alternative Fuel Technologies, and what I did was I printed this from their website. When you call in, you tell them what kind of engine you got. In my case, I've got a Robin engine. It's on a Subaru generator, but the engine's actually a Robin, and it's a Robin EX30. You answer this series of questions, and then they'll give you the appropriate device for your generator. And you can see here they've got a list: Briggs & Stratton, Craftsman, Honda, Kawasaki, just a bunch of different vendors for generators and engines. And so you'll probably find yours on the list. And if you call them, number here 877-425-8383. I left this message on the answering machine. The guy got back to me and sent me out the parts. So we're going to see how this works. The guy at work says his run's really good. Again, I don't know what the run time is, and we're going to have to determine that for our setup, but it's a very intriguing prospect, and I'm hoping this is going to work really nice. So let me get to it here. Okay, so here's the carburetor right here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove this air filter and bolt that venturi onto it. So first thing I do is take off this cover, and then the air filter, and I've got a ratchet here for the size bolt that I need. Just going to take this air filter off here. And we should have another bolt here. Alright, so take these nuts off of here, and we've got a little hose that goes into the air cleaner. We'll manage that separately. It's probably an emissions. I think that's a crankcase ventilation deal there. So let's see, got another one over here. Okay, now one of the things they mentioned is that they give you a, we're going to leave this gasket alone. They give you a gasket for this. Let me see here. Okay, so here's our new part, and they've got a little arrow on here that tells you which way the airflow is. So airflow is inward, so we're going to put it on like that. And I think we're going to go ahead and just leave this here for now, and we'll put the Teflon tape on it in a bit. Let me just see how this fits before I get our gasket. So they give you this gasket and a couple of extenders, and the purpose of this is to extend the reach of the bolts that are here already. So we'll see how this works. So I'm going to put the gasket on here. And then I have to put these on here as well. I'm going to just be sure and not pinch this gasket underneath here. And I think I've accomplished that. So now we snug that up. Again, airflow points inward. obviously we're not going to put this on here and have this kind of interfering there, so it seems like this is the obvious way to put this on, facing downward. And our gasket is looking like it's going to seal okay there. Now we may end up having to turn this around a little bit. We'll see what happens. I'm not too concerned about the crankcase ventilation, to be honest with you. But nevertheless. Okay, we've got that part on. Now we put this back on here. I don't know if this is going to clear or not, but the guy said he's never seen one that hasn't cleared the housing. We might just be the one exception to the rule. Okay, so I figured out how to get this air filter to clear, so I'll show you that in a second. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to put some Teflon tape on these fittings and get them in there properly. I wanted to put them on initially just to assemble this and see how it worked, but now that we've got it set up to where it's going to fit, I'm going to go ahead and put on some Teflon tape. And one thing you might note when you're using this Teflon tape, you don't want to get it up in here. You don't want to get it up in this area, because if you had some of that Teflon tape come off and get inside the airflow, you could have that go into an orifice and gum things up on you. So just a little note, just make sure you stay back from the edge there a little bit. Main thing is you're going to seal up the you're going to be sealing up the area that the threads are going to be sealing, so that should be good right there. So I'm going to go off camera here and tighten these down a little bit and be back in a second. Okay, so I've got these fittings on here tight, and I've got them taped, Teflon tape, so we're looking pretty good on that. Again, the airflow is going that way. We've got our gasket on here, and it's not being pinched at all by these extenders. We'll go ahead and put this on here. And while you're working with this, another thing is just make sure that you're not getting any dirt or grime down into there, because you want to keep this as pristine as you can. So there we go. We've got this situated to where this these fittings are kind of pointing out of the way here. It's not going to be obstructing the float bowl if we need to take that off. It's pointing inside, so it's not going to be extending out here too far. Just kind of, hopefully this will be a good spot for it. We're going to kind of play this by ear and see how the regulator is going to fit on here. But here we go. I discovered that this air filter will fit on here. It's very snug, but it should work. There's a bolt in this lower corner here that's not going to fit the housing anymore, but that's okay. I don't think it's going to rattle loose. So let me just put this securely on here. Main thing is you want to have your air filter, because you don't want, you know, garbage getting into your engine. It's going to take life off your engine if you got all kinds of grime in there, and So I'm not going to crank down on this too much. Just going to get it snug. And we want to make sure we have a good seal. But we don't want to be cranking down on these parts too much because this is basically soft metal on the carburetor. And we could always come back and tighten it a little bit if we had to, but if you crank it too tight and you strip something or bust one of these bolts, then you're looking at a lot of work. So let me show you a different angle of this here. So here's our air filter, and you can see the housing here is coming right up snug against this. So one of our difficulties is going to be making sure that we can get that lid on there. I know we won't have any problem getting the filter in there, but we'll see. So our filter's in, no problem. We may have an issue with this part clearing. So we're probably going to have to do a modification here. But at any rate, the important part's on there. All this really does is it provides a way for air to flow into there and dissipate and disperse over this filter. So we can probably come up with something on our own that will work. We could probably take hardware cloth or something. We'll make that a phase 2 of the project. Show you how we accomplish that. And again, this here is not going to clear, but that's not going to be an issue because it's not structural. I don't know if you can see this, but this bolt used to go in here and it would bolt to this support bracket, but since we've pushed this out about 1.5 inches because of this venturi, there's nothing for that to attach to. But again, I don't think it's going to be a problem because I don't think we're really going to induce too much vibration here. We'll test it out and see what happens, but we'll have a few little modifications to make here. So we've got that on. The next part is going to be attaching the hoses. So we may take this off and rig it up a little bit more, but this is kind of the progression. You know, you experiment with it and see how it goes. So here's another part to this. We're going to put some Teflon tape. Well, we've already put Teflon tape on this reducer, and this is the one that's labeled outlet, and that's going to attach to this hose here, and it's going to go up to the venturi. And then we've put some Teflon tape on this piece here, which will snug down there in a second. And then there's this adjustment. Basically, this adjustment is what you adjust for the flow. The pressure regulator maintains a constant pressure, and it does so arbitrarily. It's not adjustable. It's going to be not arbitrarily, but it's not dependent upon any adjustment. What it does is it maintains a constant pressure. We can go into the principles of that. Basically, there's a diaphragm in here, and your inlet pressure is regulated by spring pressure on the diaphragm and a few other things. But what we're going to do here, we're not using the vacuum. That's another way of adjusting, but this is just basically a constant pressure that it's going to maintain. And the way you adjust for your RPMs and just the flow that's going to the carburetor is through this. There's a nut here that you tighten down once you get this adjustment It's a screw adjustment. You do it with your hands, and you can see it's a taper, and that taper goes down into here, and it basically is a fine-tune adjustment as to how much gas is coming out of the pressure regulator and into your Venturi. So that's going to be what we adjust to get our RPMs, and we'll do that later. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to take this out before I tighten this down, because I don't want to jazz up that adjustment. So I'm simply removing that before I put the wrench on here, and I'm going to put it back when I'm done. And again, you don't have to get this crank down there super tight. You want it tight, but you don't want to over tighten it. So we've got this pointing up. I think we're going to figure out where to mount this, and then we'll adjust that accordingly. Okay, so I found a convenient spot to mount this regulator. What I did was, if you remember, when I took this air filter off and put it back on, I had about that much clearance I had to make up for, because this Venturi is about 1.5 inches thick. So this whole thing came up and over a little bit, and so this bolt could no longer go through onto the bracket behind it. So I'm just leaving this loose because it's not structural. It's not going to do any harm to leave that end loose. I've got this is bolted on through the bolts that attach it to the carburetor right in here. So there's no problem there. I'm just going to leave that the way it is, but I'm using the bracket underneath for this regulator. So we're going to see how that works. It looks like it vibrates a little bit, but maybe I can do something to take the vibration out of that. But and then I've got this hose going from the outlet back around up in through here. I'll show you a different angle here. It comes up through here and it attaches to the bottom of the Venturi, which is right there. So we've got it kind of routed underneath, out of the way. And one of the things too is we have this exhaust here. I didn't want to put the regulator anywhere near this. Wanted to keep the supply side separate from the exhaust, which is just common sense, I guess. But we have to deal with this breather. Quite sure this is just a crankcase ventilation for emissions. I'll go ahead and extend this out so that I can reattach that. But looks like everything's out of the way. We can still actuate our carburetor, because again, this is still going to be used for gasoline as well. So I can actuate that choke freely. And I've got the, if you can see this here, I've got this valve closed so that we can run it with compressed gas. So what I'm going to do now, let me set up this camera so that you guys can follow along a little bit here. What I'm going to do is put the last fitting on here. So we'll just put a little bit of this Teflon tape on the threads here. Just a couple of turns, you don't need a heck of a lot of it. And just observe that there's no Teflon tape in this area. And this is going to be for our inlet side. We've got a hose here with some fittings on it for flare fittings, and that's going to be what we attach to our supply, our tank for the gas grill. So our gas grill will now be, our tank for that is now going to also be for our generator. So we'll just snug this up. Doesn't look like this is too secure right now, but you know, trust me, it's not going anywhere. I may beef that up a little bit in the future, but it was just so perfect that the bracket was there. This is out of the way. We'll see how this goes. I don't want to over-engineer this. I want to see that it's going to work too, and then we can modify this down the road. So I've got that snug. Now the only thing left is we've got a flare fitting here. You can see that flare in there, and that snugly attaches to this. You don't need any Teflon tape for that. And then the other end is going to go to our tank. Okay, so there you have it. Looks like it's working okay. What I need to do is tighten this bracket down a little bit because it's wobbling, and I gotta cinch up this lock nut on this adjustment, but yeah, it seems like it's working okay. So got all the lines are tight. I'll show you this startup procedure one more time. I'm just going to reach over here, turn on the gas, get a little timer. There we go. Looks like a pretty nice setup. Alright, not bad. Pretty good setup. So, got a couple of adjustments we got to make, but all in all, not a bad setup at all. So, there we have an alternate fuel source for our generator, so we can operate off of gasoline, and we can also operate off of propane. So, this is going to give us a lot of flexibility. So guys, if you want to check this out, I'll leave some information in the comments where I got this adapter from, and you can try it for yourselves. Take care.